Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have inspired the people in my network, their lives, their businesses, whatever it is they're into. And I'm interviewing these great leads to get to those books that have done just that. They've left the biggest impact on them. They stand out, whether it is someone else's book or their own. And my guest today is Emma G. And Emma is a force of nature, a two-time TEDx speaker, #1 best-selling author, empowerment coach, and award-winning musician on a mission to save the world one song at a time. Born with hydrocephalus and having undergone 10 brain surgeries, she turned to songwriting as a lifeline, transforming struggle into resilience and purpose. Today, she helps teens, professionals, and audiences worldwide reclaim their voices through her empowerment through songwriting and vocal coaching programs, music-infused keynotes, and original songs. Emma has performed at the Kennedy Center, National Cherry Blossom Festival, the Viper Room, Rockwood Music Hall, and headlined a 20-city youth empowerment tour with Hard Rock Café. Her latest singles, Grieve and Glitter, continue her mission to use music to heal, empower, and inspire change. Featured by Fox, CBS, NPR, ABC News, KATU Portland, The Washington Post, and Medium, Emma brings a raw, engaging energy that reminds us all, don't let the world write your song. Emma, thank you for being here for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I'm super excited for whatever it is we dive into today.
I love that attitude. So I love being drawn to your story because it's helping people and it's about music and creativity, and your own struggles in life. It's just all these components about taking what life has given you and just putting it out there to help other people through the creative process worldwide, adults, younger people, all of it. So I even now just reading the bio, I'm appreciative that there's somebody out there doing that great work. Now, specifically to this conversation, who are you today? So obviously there's a lot there. What does your day-to-day look like when you have so many components to your work, to your career, to your business? What does that look like in the day-to-day?
I'm laughing at that question because I'm acutely aware that I tend to do way too much for the normal human being in many ways. And I kind of blame my TBI for that. I found out recently that, researching for my new book, that the relationship between TBI, ADHD, and autism is super linked. And so I have many of the characteristics of somebody who just does too much, basically. But the day-to-day is very much starts with me writing my to-do lists for my morning. And often that to-do list includes, 20 or 30 tasks that I will need to get done. And it's just me going ham, basically, because I think one of the things that keeps me going and making sure that I'm doing all these things is that I'm so passionate about the mission and vision behind my work as opposed to just the doing, if that makes sense. So who am I? I'm a creative. I'm somebody who, I view my work as very much as acting in service of my audience, whether it's through my original music or coaching. I am a wife. I am a cat mom. I'm a health fanatic, fitness fanatic, and I'm just very intentional about using every single moment and living every single moment that I have on purpose and in purpose.
So what does that look like when you're talking about songwriting, when you're preparing keynotes, when you're doing all of this and writing? Not your day-to-day, not every block of time, but what would your typical week look like? Like how is it you get those things in there? And is it seasonal based on, obviously, season, but is it the same throughout the year, or does certain work take over your schedule certain parts of the year? What does that look like?
That's a good question. And I think, yes, it can be a little bit seasonal, but I think one of the things that has really served me beautifully over the past 10 years that I've been doing this kind of work in the United States, is making sure I'm working in flow with myself as opposed to, having to-dos as opposed to I get tos.
Yeah.
right? So when we look at like the macro, what it is that, you know, drives me or what it is that I get done, it's more a case of, okay, so typical week, I might perform 1 to 3 shows. Typical week, I'll have between 3 to 7 clients. Typical week, I help my husband with his self-defense school that we run together in Bethesda, Maryland. But in addition to that, I'm also, I run workshops for different organizations around the DC area. And, it's just all about managing my calendar super wisely, but also giving myself grace to make sure that I'm getting to bed on time, that I have my nana nap if I need to have my nana nap, that
I have those
I
too.
you know
I
what I
have
mean?
those too.
And but also getting up early enough to feed my body and soul with the gym and with prayer and with meditation and yoga, and doing all the things that look after our holistic well-being as opposed to just the grind that I think we've so naively fallen in love with, because I think that is a very masculine dominated view on how we thrive as people. When, I think it's really important that both men and women take time to look at their social, emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental well-being as it comes to how they're conducting their lives and their businesses.
So when I asked you that question, you had mentioned in the face of, I think you said TBI, ADHD, and what was the other component?
So I don't have ADHD or autism,
Okay.
but there's a relationship between autism and like a very strong relationship. And there's multiple research that shows the relationship between ADHD and autism. It's a spectrum. I know that's the buzzword of 2025, but it is a spectrum. What I found out when I was researching my book is that many of the characteristics of both autism and ADHD show up in those who have traumatic brain injury.
Ah, okay. Sorry, it
And
was the acronym. I should have
I
guessed
apologize.
that one. Okay. Okay.
That was me being very
No,
presumptuous.
no, no, it's all right. It's okay.
Yeah. So, so my ability to basically like juggle multiple tasks at one time, for example, is overwhelming to many people. But for me, that's kind of how I thrive when it comes to, really zoning in on specific tasks until they get completed. That's very much apparently because of the relationship between autism and TBI. And to sort of demonstrate what I mean by that, several times now I have set myself a write a song a day challenge, which most people would look at that and go, what the heck? Why would you do that? That seems like a lot of work. But, that's what I did for 32 plus days back in 2021 and 2023. Because for me, that's just how my brain works. I set a task for myself and I, you know, really knuckle down and get it done whilst juggling other tasks.
So then to learn more about you, your story, and how you got to today and all the work that you're doing,
Mhm.
can you walk me through the story to now? Typically, I like to start around high school or the age when someone's typically going into the workforce, around that time when they're trying to figure out what that next step is or the first step is in life. So around high school, college age, what did that look like from then to now?
You mean what did it look like?
Just
What it was, sorry.
your path to now. What did it?
Well, my path definitely started before high school, because I was born with a brain condition, hydrocephalus, which, by the way, you pronounced beautifully. So thank you. But, so at the age of 4 months old was when I had my first brain surgery. And by the time I was 12, I'd had 10 brain surgeries and 24
Wow.
surgeries in total. So I think, again, because the brain damage can affect everybody's brains very differently, and everybody's brains works differently anyway. And we're still learning so much about how the brain works. It's hard to kind of really dial in on the exact what happened to me when and why. But I there's no question in my mind that because of my brain trauma, it was at the age of 5 that I decided I wanted to be a rock star, a a therapist or a counselor, a mother, and a teacher. And to most people, that sounds kind of like, what the heck? Why would you? That those are very different things. But that was kind of like what I decided was the thing that made sense to me. And then fast forward to my high school years, middle school years, that resulted in me exploring the many different avenues of my interests. And it kind of all came to a head, I guess, to your credit. Yeah, when I was 19, I'd already spent 3.5 years studying to be a mechanic. I'd spent, I'd gone to Polytechnic in New Zealand and gotten my teaching qualifications. I had graduated Rock School UK as a rock and opera singer. And I was doing all these things that kind of fostered my 5-year-old self's dreams. But it wasn't until my ex-boyfriend committed suicide and I was on my way to his funeral that I made myself a promise that I wanted to do everything I could with music to help other young people recognize that they don't have to give up, that there are other ways that we can facilitate our mental health, our emotional well-being, our connection with each other to help us find that inner strength, find that inner compass to seek help and or figure out, what those answers are for ourselves. And that led me into teaching. That led me into coaching.
How did you know that? How did you
How did I know
how did
that?
you know that? What was your thinking at the time? Like, I know obviously it's a major life event when somebody passes like that. But what was it? Was it just your passion for music? How did you make that connection at a relatively young age, that connection between music and mental health?
That's a great question. And I think it's been an ongoing sort of knocking at my conscious for most of my life. And I say that because, when I was 11, I was an ambassador for New Zealand youth at a worldwide symposium in Florida at Disney World, with 2,000 other young people from around the world. Hashtag got to meet Christopher Reeves. It was exciting. But so it was partly that. It was partly my, when I was 15 and in the lowest of my own lows, I was unhoused. I was struggling with my own addictions. I was very, dealing with a lot of trauma that I'd been exposed to, unfortunately, and we can dig into that later. But, I remember wanting to unalive my own self and feeling, I don't know, almost hearing a voice inside myself saying, don't give up. You've got no idea what's in store for you. That was at 15. So at 19, when that same voice came back and said, you need to do whatever you can with music to help other young people hold on, that was just, I guess, a common reoccurrence, whether it was from God, whether it was from my own inner compass, whether it was from, my own logical brain trying to make sense of another very traumatic event. That, I guess, the jury's out on that. But I've always just had a very innate sense of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. And that has just continued to come to me over and over again. Oprah talks about it, that still small voice in the back of your mind. When you ignore that voice, it keeps knocking and pretty soon that stone turns into a boulder.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
the boulder turns into a slap across the face like, hello.
So just picking up, sorry to interrupt. I was just curious how those insights that you gained, like you said, on the way to your ex-boyfriend's services. So I was curious about that, but picking up from there afterwards.
So from that point, when I was driving to his funeral, at that point in my life, I had been teaching vocals privately from my home studio in Hamilton, New Zealand. I'd been doing that kind of off the cuff. That led me to teaching adult education classes at a university for those who, people who are parents of teenagers and finally wanted to do things to fill their own cup. So that sort of evolved into me teaching them, predominantly women, how to, reconnect with their voices, reconnect with their joy, reconnect with their sense of self in many ways, their inner child. And that led me to teaching an adult choir and conducting an adult choir. We were called the Waikato Modern Choir and sang everything from Les Miserables to Queen and ABBA. And yes, the headbanging from Wayne's World was incorporated.
That's awesome.
But, so that kind of led to that. And then from there, I felt this pull to move to Auckland, New Zealand, to do even more. And so I got a job teaching at university, which then led me to also coaching rather, at the YMCA. And again, you just keep showing up, keep following that inner gut feeling of like, this is what I need to do. And then what's the parable from the Bible of like, the more you use and lean into your gifts, the more gifts you get given.
I like that.
So, right. So if, as I was leaning into that part of myself, that led me to, in 2014, coming sixth in X Factor New Zealand, and then getting kicked off because I refused to play the role of the angry Black woman. True story. Well, if you can't play into that narrative, it's not going to make for good television. I'm like, well, clearly I'm not a very angry person. My bad. So, that led me to then my hard rock band at the time, Static Era, hit number 11 on the New Zealand top 20 charts. That led me to also being the ambassador of Tough Mudder when it first came to New Zealand as well. Tough Mudder, 18-kilometer obstacle race in mud. Super fun.
Emma, so just going through this list of all these things that you jumped into, you may have shared it where that intuition came from, but maybe you could clarify it or express it yourself. Where did that come from? That need to kind of do all these things. I can imagine just based on what you've told me, but how do you speak to that?
Quite simply, opening the door. When things arrive on your doorstep, giving yourself the opportunity to say, okay, that feels right.
Did someone share that with you, a mentor, an adult, or how did you come to that? Or it's just kind of like, from what I'm hearing, it's like, I'm going to explore everything that not everything, but everything that I can use to develop, to grow, to learn. Where did that come from?
Another traumatic event. Partly my own surviving of brain surgery, but also that same year that my ex-boyfriend unalived himself, my surrogate brother died from a diabetes complication. And he was a drummer. He idolized Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. He was New Zealand's version of that. He was crazy. He was enigmatic. He was just an incredible character. And I remember being at his funeral thinking, again, to my own story, not a day we're given in life is guaranteed. Therefore, I would be doing a disservice to Source, to God, to the universe, and to myself and my community by not allowing myself permission to say yes to everything that brings me joy, to everything that excites me, to everything that aligns with my 5-year-old self.
And you've mentioned faith, you've mentioned God. What's your relationship with religion? When did that start?
I've always been spiritual. My mother always taught me spirituality. We used to actually visit different places of worship around New Zealand when I was a teenager because she wanted to give me a holistic view of what faith looks like. Her family, Persian, Muslim, but her mother's side of the family, my grandmother, was Lutheran. They're all Lutheran. my side of the family, my dad's side of the family, Jehovah's Witness and Methodist, I kind of settled on, I never really jived with Christianity until relatively recently. I've always been a spiritual person because I just think it'd be naive not not to have that connection with yourself. But for me, it wasn't until I moved, and actually, it wasn't until I really got serious with my husband that I actually started to really explore that part of myself. And it took me a minute to find a faith or, a church, if you will, that aligned with my beliefs, and what I know in my heart of hearts to be true. But I've always maintained that I'm a very spiritual person and very open and embracing of everybody's belief systems, because I believe that, you know, that is a huge part of our holistic well-being. If we deny ourselves from any kind of spiritual practice, we're denying a large part of who we are as human beings. We're not, we're human beings, not human doings,
Yeah.
not not human seeings, but human beings. And, being able to lean into that part of ourselves, I think, is really important.
Okay. I took you down that tangent. Now back to your story. You were in the rock band, number 11, I believe you said, on the charts.
Yes.
And then from there,
Yeah. So I was Tough Mudder,
Tough
X
Mudder.
Factor, rock band, and then I won a local hero. What was it? Local Heroes Award for New Zealand, and I also won an award for youth empowerment education, specifically because I'm such a believer in using a person's culture and histories to inform their future and the way that we empower young people, which I think. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
No,
Which I think.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You first. You're the guest. You first.
Yeah. So I think, and that's an integral part of how I work as an empowerment through songwriting coach and a vocal coach, or just as an educator in general, is that we need to live in a world. I believe it's more impactful and more, it serves our young people far better if we can teach a young person because of their histories, because of their backgrounds, because of the experiences that they've endured and experienced. All of that comes into how people learn effectively. And so now that I'm working in a coaching capacity predominantly, it's really important that we honor that part of ourselves and recognize where we come from, so that then we can write the songs for our future, for our healthier, more empowered versions of ourselves.
So at the time you're in the band and you win the award, I'm assuming the band wasn't your full-time gig, that you had something you were doing. Yeah, I can imagine you in different capacities. So at the time,
I was a full-time musician, but I was also, after a while, I started teaching. Yes.
So at the time you got that award, what was the teaching you were doing? What was the role that you had in that capacity?
So I was teaching 20 hours a week at a university in Auckland, or Auckland.
No.
Americans know
Say
what
it the right
Auckland
way.
is.
Say it the right way. It's all right.
So I was teaching 20 hours a week there, and I was also an empowerment coach for the YMCA for teenagers.
Okay.
And that looked like working out with kids 2 or 3 times a week to give them a healthy outlet for their energy. And that also looked like having weekly meetings. And a lot of the youth I was working with, it was a wide diaspora of backgrounds, but it was everywhere from young people who, were very well-to-do, to those that were being initiated into gangs, or at least, gangs were trying to feel them out for them. And again, so I tried to expose them to other avenues that they could express themselves fully and honestly without going down negative paths. So a lot of it was, I feed them once a week with different ingredients, and then we'd have like a food challenge to see who could come up with the most creative meal plan out of 5 ingredients. Or I would teach them a recipe, and then we would work together every week to put on events 4 times a year that served the whole community of young people. So we put on dance parties, we put on parkour workshops, we put on like a whole, and this was all from them because who was I? I don't know what, at the age of 24, 25, I didn't know what 12-year-olds were into, but that was, they wanted to, write a song. Okay, let's do that. I wanted to, have a rap battle. Cool, let's do that. Like whatever it is, just helping young people to, again, learn how to channel their energy effectively.
Amazing. So then from that time to now, how is it you start building this empire that you're rolling out?
Oh, empire, that's a big word. No pressure.
Hey, we had that talk about your bio and everything that's in there and all the different areas, and that's an empire, my friend.
Oh, thank you. How did that happen? I think so. I started my life in DC as a street performer.
Yeah, so how did you end up in the States?
Well, that's a good question. My mom's originally from Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so I was a dual citizen my entire life. And my family's here. I've got family in.
You are all over the world in terms of ethnicity, religion. Like that's the last thing I expected you to say was, "Oh, my mom's from Pennsylvania." That's incredible.
I mean,
Yeah, goes without saying. Sorry, I'm a little slow. Okay, so your mom's originally from Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yes, from Erie, of course.
Is that for real?
Actually,
Oh
yeah.
my God.
From,
Okay.
from what was it? I think Lake Road.
Okay.
And anyways, so I've always been an American citizen. My Persian family live in LA. My Norwegian family live in Iowa. And I didn't know much about myself in terms of my family history. And if I was teaching so many of these young people in New Zealand about how to honor their culture and histories in their education and in their way of living a holistic life, I feel like it's, teachers don't just teach, they also need to lead by example. So I, I kind of felt like I hit the ceiling in New Zealand with X Factor and with the rock band and with youth work. And I just, a goldfish grows to the capacity of its bowl. Make the bowl bigger. America's pretty big. So I got a job as a hiking instructor at a girls' camp in Massachusetts, worked there for 3 months. That led me to another opportunity to teach outdoor science education in Connecticut, and loved that. Of course, New Zealand's very big on hiking and outdoorsy stuff. What we don't have are bears and underground wasps and all
That's
the
where I
gnarly
am now, Connecticut.
wildlife we have here. Right.
A bear just broke into a house a couple towns over, ate everything, and then just left. Yeah, Connecticut is next level, man.
Right. I have a contract with an organization here in DC that teaches HEFAT training, and I do stress management and de-escalation for journalists. And we have a home base in Holmes, New York. And yeah, we had a bear hang out with us for a couple of hours recently. It was wild, literally. But so anyways, my mother's from Erie. I wanted to make my goldfish bowl bigger. So I got this job in Connecticut, and between the Massachusetts contract and the Connecticut contract, a girlfriend of mine and I drove to Indiana, where she was from, to settle some stuff with her family. And of course, we broke down in New York State, ended up in Rockville, Maryland, for 10 days while for 5 days while her house, her car got fixed. And that's how I discovered DC. And again, that small, still voice that visited me when I was 15 and 19 knocked again and said, Emma, you need to come back here. This is your home. And I just listened. So after Connecticut, I moved to DC and made my life as a street performer for 5.5 years before the pandemic broke out. And that street performing led me to recording music, led me to writing theme songs for people like the Author Incubator or Marianne Williamson. Even the American Association for the Advancement of Science got me to write a song for them called Unity and Devastation. I ended up performing with people like Noah Guthrie from Glee. I performed with Dave Chappelle. Did I know who Dave Chappelle was when I performed with him? No. I'm mortified now looking back, but here we are. And that kind of just led to one thing, to one thing, to one thing. And of course, in this whole, journey, I met my husband, who was running a Krav Maga self-defense school in Chevy Chase at the time. And I decided to go to him for lessons because as a solo female musician touring and performing, I needed to look after myself. And in 2019, 2020, he asked me if I wanted, what was my long-term vision as an artist? Did I want to continue to busk for the rest of my life? Did I want to continue to gig? And I said to him, no, actually, I think what I want to do is get into keynote speaking and do more like based on mental health and coaching and things like that. And I'm not kidding, John. Literally 3 days later, I got a phone call from Andrea and Anik Singhal, who were putting together the first TEDx Rockville event in 2022. And that's how I became a keynote speaker. It wasn't me applying for it. It was just, again, that still small voice from source saying, this is where you're supposed to be.
How did they know about you? How did they know of you to reach out to you?
Apparently, they Googled inspirational people in the DC area. I don't know. I've got no idea. They were looking through various people's profiles. Somehow, I don't know how I came across their vision.
And when you say street performer, how were you for years in DC? What does that look like? What does that mean?
Oh, that looks like getting up at 4:45 in the morning, which I cringe at now, and taking the bus with my guitar down to one of the metro centers in the DC area. I don't know how familiar you are with DC, but we have quite a thriving, train system here. And so I started literally at Metro Center on GN 13th, singing every morning. And then there was apparently he was like an old, back in the day, he was a bit of a hustler, shall we say. And he suggested I, look at other stations as well and start getting more of a routine going on. And I was like, oh, that's a good idea. So I ended up, having my Monday station, my Tuesday station, my Wednesday station, getting up at 4:45 every morning and singing for people for, from 6:30 to 10. And I remember one person, a lawyer, walked past me one Friday and said, you need a sign. And so he made me a little manila folder sign that said, thank you at Emma G Music. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can turn this into a marketing thing as well. That's a good idea. So that led me to then getting my own sign, which then led me to...
Did you have the Emma G Music name before that? Okay.
Yeah, okay. I've always been Emma G.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've always been Facebook, Emma G Music, Instagram, Emma G Music, YouTube, Emma G Music. But yeah, and then that led me to, getting a sign, getting CDs recorded and available for sale for those who wanted to support. Did I charge an actual fee? No. We have a term in New Zealand called koha, Koha, which literally stands for pay what you feel is fair. So I've sold CDs for 50 cents. I've sold one CD for $50. It's just whatever people felt resonated with them. And that's how that's how I started building everything, was like, okay, where is it you want me to go? Let me follow.
What were you doing? Were you doing anything else besides that? Like full time? Really?
It was the best job in the world. I would joke around.
Aside from getting up at 4:30 in the morning.
I didn't mind that.
Oh, come on.
No, seriously. Being able to sing and see the sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
And
and help people start their day off right. You know what I mean?
Part.
Like,
being able to
a
challenge
quiet,
myself.
bustling metro station or car, or somebody singing, good music.
Well, to your point, you say you have the opposite of a resting, smiling face,
I did say
right?
that. Yes, I did.
My entire thing was like, I want to see how many people I can make smile today. Like that was legitimately
Yeah.
my thing. That's what I wanted to do. And
And plus, you have your regulars, so they look forward to seeing you probably and experiencing the music while they're going through that area.
it's funny you bring that up because I remember, so I went to Iowa for Christmas, for my first Christmas, and cold, 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 just FYI.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I got back to DC and somebody was at my usual Wednesday spot. So I went to another random place, metro station and, set up shop. And I wish I was making this up. Legitimately, this woman walked past me, saw me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been looking for you everywhere." And she thrust an envelope into my hand and then rushed off. I opened it. There was a Starbucks gift card there and a letter, typed letter, addressed to Dear Songbird, where, to your
Ah,
point, she was apparently one of my regulars every Wednesday at Foggy Bottom. She recently transitioned to another, place for work, but uh, evidently she was juggling and carrying so much. Was going through divorce. Her kids were with her every other week. She worked 2 jobs to support herself and her children. She, was averaging 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. She was studying. She was doing all this stuff, and she was exhausted. And she said in her letter that the 3 lights in her life were her children, obviously, her relationship with God, and my music on Wednesday mornings. And that broke me.
mm,
So I actually ended up getting this tattoo in honor of her.
wow.
And, because she addressed me as Dear Songbird, which coincidentally is what my husband calls me. But that was literally, like, oh, this is bigger than me. This is service. This is not my ego. This is what my 19-year-old self needs to learn more about. And that's, I don't know, that's just like, that's one of the experiences I had as a street performer, as a busker, that I've just always kept with me to help me stay aligned with the fact that this isn't about me. This is
Yeah.
about the we.
You just never know. You just never know who's listening to what you're saying, who's reading what you're writing, who's listening to what you're singing. It's
Yep.
it's incredible. It's common sense. You have one performer or speaker, they have a microphone, a room full of people, or a subway station or metro station full of people. But it's
Yeah.
like, stop and think about what that ripple effect is of energy, of love, of consideration, of enjoyment. It's incredible. I've always envied that in musicians, but I mean, we all have that in some capacity. There's a way that you can help create a great ripple effect of energy in whatever environment you're in. And I think most people need to really consider the power of what they can say, like the little gestures they
Yeah.
can carry out. But that's an amazing story.
The ability to smile at people, right? Just smiling at a stranger and saying hi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it confuses the
Yeah, oh yeah,
crap out
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah. They clutch
why are you
their
being
bag a
nice?
little closer to them and like put their hand in their pockets, make sure their wallet's still there.
Right.
But
And you're like, "Have a great day."
yeah,
Whatever. Or if they're wearing a name badge, or asking them their name and just,
yeah,
relating to them and letting them know that you're a
little things, and
person.
most of it is
Mhm.
free.
Yep.
Obviously, gift cards come into this story at certain points or whatever, but most of what you can do for somebody to make their day great or just their moment or just help them feel seen is just free. Little things we take for granted.
Precisely.
So Emma,
Precisely.
so from there, what was the 20 city youth empowerment tour? How did that come
That's
about?
a good question. So I am really, really lucky, really blessed that I've had a really positive relationship with the Hard Rock Cafe for many years now. I used to play there regularly, and uh, moving from, obviously I was still gigging a lot when I launched my youth empowerment through songwriting coaching and vocal coaching here in the DC area, but I, post-pandemic, I realized that we needed even more to serve our young people because, reports were coming out of just the trauma that so many young people were having to deal with and the aftermath of that. We have no idea still how much the pandemic, the isolation, the loneliness, even the way that they were learning online was going to affect them long term. So what I ended up doing, because I know that the Hard Rock Cafe are very passionate about youth and making sure that they are, serving the young people globally, not just nationally. I talked to Sarah Lester, who at the time was managing the DC location, and I said, "Hey, I've got this crazy idea. I haven't been on tour since 2019. I know that you guys have, you know, locations all over the country. How about we partner? I go on tour, I play at Hard Rock cafes around the country and run empowerment through songwriting workshops in cities that, you know, have hard rocks. And we do something fun with this." I tell you, it was a very intense 3 months. I ended up taking one of my friend's daughters, who was 17 at the time, on tour with us as my intern. And, so I was like her faux big sister for 3 months. And my drummer and we drove everywhere from New Orleans to Miami to San Antonio to Indiana. Like, we went everywhere and got to run these, empowerment through songwriting workshops at different Hard Rocks. But even cooler, because Hard Rock is such a renowned name for so many families, we got to invite young people to come up on stage with us and just sing for the first time in public and have fun and realize that, we live in a world that I think that is still so set on, you need to grow up and do this, that, and the other thing
Mm.
in order to be successful in life. And I want to encourage young people specifically, but, my oldest young person is 66, so you do the math. But, just remind them that the world is your oyster. And we're living in a world, with the internet, with everything that is just AI elevating so quickly. We have no idea what's possible for us next year, let alone in 5, 10, 15 years. And being able to use your voice on stage is a huge confidence boost to finding out more about who you are and how you want to show up for the world. That's why I talk about don't let the world write your song.
Yeah.
I want people to recognize that we don't live in a world anymore where we need to go and work for someone else. We have the power to exercise our own autonomy, our own voices, our own vision, mission, thinking, and become our best versions of ourselves.
So how?
And it was
Oh, go ahead. And what?
No, it was great. It was great. It was exhausting. 3 months of driving around the country and singing and trying to maintain social media, blah blah. But it was such a powerful experience.
So then, how did you? When it lists in your bio, you're featured by Fox, CBS, NPR, all the other outlets. What is that for? What is it specifically that they've reached out to you for? What is it? This kind of programming? Is it your programming with adults? What is it that you've been featured in these mediums for?
Good question. So Fox specifically has been more focused on my music, specifically with, my performances around, music about self-empowerment and about uh, resilience and even social justice. CBS was about uh, I'm trying to remember what that specific article was about. It was more in conjunction with more focusing rather on, I get just like music stuff more than anything. NPR, that was a huge unexpected thing. I was on my way on to Milwaukee to perform at Summerfest. And there was a woman at the airport handing out signs, social justice signs that she felt passionate about. And I thought, one of the signs in particular resonated with me. So I remember holding it up, going through the airport, and somebody snapped a picture of it and posted it. And NPR was like, "Oh, snap!" So, but it was a sign about just making sure that we recognize that when we talk about equality, that it's recognizing the power and importance of all people.
Mm-hmm.
ABC News was about the empowerment through songwriting and singing coaching. Same with KATU Portland. That was specifically about the tour with Hard Rock Café. Washington Post, I'm humbled to have been featured in twice. The first time was focusing specifically on my life as a musician, but more recently on my first book, actually, and my empowerment through songwriting coaching. And Medium is all about my relationship between music and mental health.
You're such a champ. I just meant like in general what they featured you for, and you went through the whole list. I love that.
Oh, sorry.
So detailed. No, not
Details
at all.
matter, John.
Not at all. I didn't want to cut you off. I'm like, all right, she's already halfway through the list. Let her go. Let her flow. No, yeah, it was just to get a general idea for why they were featuring you. But no, I appreciate that. A few more questions before I dive into my standard questions. So at what point do you start working with, like you said, I think you said one of your youngest, oldest was 66.
Yes.
Most of the work that I've heard you talk about has been with the youth. So was there a piece with older generations at the same time early on, or is that something newer? When did you shift to also including them?
Well, so I've always taught adults, even when I started my business as a vocal coach when I was, 17, my youngest was 8, my oldest was 60. The choir, the modern choir, the youngest was 14, the oldest was 81. So for me, it's all about, yes, recognizing that it's youth that is the focus, sure, but for so many of us, we forget to reignite that inner spark that we have. Was it Einstein or something that said, the intelligence is intelligence is creativity getting taught out of us, or no, education is creativity being taught out of us. And so many of us, unfortunately, and especially in the DC area or any big cities, we focus so much on making money and being productive financially that we forget about the things that bring us joy. And so I want to help young people be proactive about that. I want to help adults be reactive about that.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Because just in my experiences with my own kids, I see the education piece, like the wild eyes that they have for the world, the eyes of wonder, the eyes of creativity. And then when they go into their education, there's just something very sterile about it. I know it's very important, but there's something that does get programmed out of them. So I appreciate you sharing that. What else did I want to ask? I think that's it for your path to now. And yeah, your husband, like a busker going into Krav Maga, like that's the rom-com that I want to see. That's the one I want. That's the one I'll watch.
Let's make it happen. We'll put it out to the
Let's
universe.
make it happen.
Calling Universal Studios now.
Yeah. Oh, I know. If you put it out there, it'll happen for you. And
well, he's secretly a Jedi, so if I bring this idea to him, somehow he'll make it work.
Makes sense. You guys are together then,
right? Well, it's unbelievable. Like I think we are who we associate with, right? We are our 5 closest friends. We are what we listen to. We are the words that we say to ourselves. And again, that's why I'm so passionate about songwriting, because I want to make sure that we're intentional with our word. But when it comes to, how he and I work with each other, we feed into each other's light. I think the definition of a power couple is about or power friendship is about being around people who celebrate you when you're not in the room, who inspire you to be the best version of yourself. And that, that I'm really grateful for my husband to be that person. And I'm grateful that I get to be that for him. I didn't know this when he first started writing his book, that it was because I'd written my book. And he was like, oh, I can't,
We'll get to your books very quickly, though. What's his book?
So he has 2 books, Self-Defense, Why Even Bother, and Jiu-Jitsu for Self-Defense, Why Even Bother. And he has not so subtly told me that this winter he's going to start working on Krav Maga for self-defense, Why Even Bother? And it's all about, again, the mindset, the physical, aspects of self-defense, and the practical aspects of different art forms, but also, some of the really quite weird questions that people have when it comes to training. Do I have to be fit, or do I have to be 6 foot in order to do self-defense? No, you're not going to get attacked if you're 6 foot as much as a 5 foot
Yeah.
nothing person would be,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for what he works on.
Oh, absolutely. It
Watch
sounds amazing. I love the martial arts. I've always been curious about them. Emma, so now having learned about you, your background, your bio, your path to today, those little tangents I took you down, how do you reconcile who you were as a kid to who you are now? What comes through? And you have mentioned that you hear that 5-year-old voice in your head sometimes, pushing you in different directions, waking you up to certain possibilities and opportunities. But now asking you the question directly, what else would you provide that ties who you were as a kid to who you are now?
I live my life one cheesy line at a time. So I'm going to quote one of those cheesy things that I came up on my Instagram feed, however long ago it was. But it's not about how you go through things, it's about how you grow through things. And going back to my 15-year-old self, I think it was during that time that I remember, like, I had this sense that the crap I was going through was because it was leading me to the person I needed to be for myself and for other people. So, brain surgeries, you grow through those because there are so many other young people who feel misunderstood by whatever measure, whether it's their own brain trauma, whether it's, their struggles with cancer, whether it's their struggles with losing parents, whatever that is. Trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter if it's the same trauma. It's just, it affects us the same at the end of the day. So, whether it's that, whether it's, getting, I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, I apologize, trigger warning. Whether it's sexual assault, I have unfortunately been at the wrong end of that situation way too many times that, unfortunately that happens though. So yes, give yourself time to wallow, process, grieve, but how do I grow through that? I lead that, I use that as fuel to help me support other survivors. Being, struggling with my own, addiction when it comes to substance abuse. How do I let that fuel me? Obviously, grateful that I've overcome that. But I've just finished a 6-week immersion coaching series at a treatment clinic here in DC. And I'm about to do another one, soon. It's things like that that help just keep me aligned.
Oh, so for yourself, you just did that program?
Yes, I don't know. I just ran it.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't me. Yeah, so it was me facilitating. So it was,
Gotcha.
again, you go through these things so that you can grow through them, so that then you can continue to serve.
When did it strike you that there were things that you could bring forward from those events, from those traumas? Because you had mentioned if it's happened to anybody out there, give yourself time to grieve, but then try to grow through it. So for you, what might have happened? What did you learn that maybe shifted the way you thought about those events? When did that happen?
Uh, I don't know. I think, um, I think it's been an accumulative process through conversations I've had with people, through podcasts I've listened to, through, um, my own relationship with Krav Maga. Like, you get knocked down, you get back up again. Um, and this time you know what the punch was that knocked you down, so you learn to duck it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn how to counter, you learn how to strike back.
Emma, what do you consider your superpower?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think either connection or compassion or positivity. Yeah.
Obviously, you've said so much about how you've come to where you are, the way you view things. Can you speak a little more to why those are or might be your superpowers?
Connection, as a musician, as a coach, it's important to connect with people. We're human beings that work in community. We're social creatures. I think connection is really important. When it comes to compassion, uh, again, I know what it's like to feel misunderstood. I know what it's like to feel alone in your struggles. And so I'm very mindful that if I felt that way a lot, then I'm sure everybody else feels that same way. We're not unique in that in that way. And when it comes to positivity, what's that saying of like, it takes however many muscles to frown and however many muscles to smile. Uh, we have we have a choice in everything we do, in every way. We can't control how people treat us, but we can control how we respond, right? And so positivity for me is about making the choice, the active decision to not fall victim to negativity. It's like the Native American tale, the wolf was the tale of two wolves. I wrote a song about it called "The Wolf I Feed." It's literally about just our power to make decisions for ourselves,
Yeah.
and that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I think we tend to fall into those reactive modes, like everything's happening to us instead of taking the control that we can and moving forward. So I appreciate that reminder. Emma, before I jump to the next question, what can you give an example of the music aspect of your coaching and your workshops? How does that get infused into your work?
Oh, it's like the roots of the tree. Everything comes back to music.
Yeah.
When I'm doing stress management coaching, as part of that heat fat training with an organization here in DC, we talk about breath work as being something that helps us to, lower our cortisol levels. What else needs to breathe? The way we sing, we can't, we need correct breathing technique in order for us to sing properly. Okay, cool. What else helps to give us confidence when we're feeling beaten down by the world? The way we stand. Oh, posture also is an integral part of how we sing. The way that music helps us, when we listen to music, especially different frequencies, melody, that they all feed into how our bodies process stress and overwhelm and um, cortisol again. The brain can use music to help us remember and reimagine scenarios. We all know, well, maybe we don't all know, but there is, research that has come to find that our brains cannot differentiate between imagination and reality. So when we can, put ourselves into a position of listening to very positive music with positive lyrics, we're reinforcing this idea that we are positive people and happy, even when we might be feeling down in the dumps originally. On the contrary, if we spend our time listening to really aggressive, angry, upset, overwhelmed music, it has the same effect, even if we weren't feeling that way in the beginning, right? So how do I do that with coaching? I, do a lot of cognitive reframe sort of techniques with my clients, but it all ultimately comes to helping young people specifically, but everybody in general, to write songs for their best, most empowered version of themselves, whether it's a version that they're becoming and are not there yet,
Yeah.
Or if it's a version of themselves that they once were and they want to get back to. It is what it is. And then I often, when I'm doing keynotes, well, not often, all the time when I'm doing keynotes, I will emphasize every single point I make in the speech with a song that ties into that relevant theme. Because again, music and memory are so interconnected.
Yeah.
That's why we still sing the ABCs, right? If we can have a song that ties to the message we want to reaffirm for ourselves, it just helps. And it keeps people engaged
Yeah,
because
it
whoop
helps.
knows our attention spans have become terrible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Emma, one last question before jumping into your book. What does leadership mean to you? What does great leadership look like?
Leadership to me is about being unapologetic about shining your light so bright that other people can be drawn to it. And what I mean by that is you cannot see in the darkness if you don't have a way forward, if you can't see the way forward. So when you lead by example, when you lead by positive energy, when um, you know, give people an opportunity to see more clearly, then you're effectively able to lead more clearly, more compassionately, more strategically.
Beautiful. And then before we jump into the book we wanted to cover,
Yes.
why don't you speak to your previous book
Oh,
if you
yeah,
wanted
sure.
to?
So I've actually got kind of two. Nah. I've written a couple. The first one, the most recent one before this latest, is called Reconnect with Your Teenager. And it's literally an A to Z guide for parents of teenagers who are interested in finding out how music and songwriting can be helpful for their relationship with their teenagers. There's practical exercises and things that, parents can do with their teens as it pertains to writing songs together. However, I've not really focused on that. It's just been there in my resource bucket for a while because being an author wasn't really ever my plan. It just was like, oh, I feel like this would be helpful for the parents of the teenagers that I work with. But then, of course, many parents don't have time to do as much of that kind of work with their teenagers as we used to be able to. We, again, live in a world of hustle, bustle, and grind. So that's kind of why I decided to do this next book, Mental Health Sounds Like This, to help, not just, again, give interactive exercises, but also show my story and my journey and, give people more of a neuroscience-backed reasoning as to why this stuff works.
And I mean, you just showed the newest book. So can you
Yes.
introduce the book, and then what was it that kind of triggered you and kind of prompted you into writing the book? How did that come to be?
Great question. So it's called Mental Health Sounds Like This. As you can see, it's a woman, or a hand rather, that's offering music as a tool, or as a, I don't know, lifeline. How did the book come to be? A conversation with a dope local record producer here in the DC area, Kimberly Shires, of Hear Me Roar Studios, and we were talking about our businesses and what we were doing. And I don't know, I used to have this running, well, I still have this running gag where you have a conversation with somebody and they'll say something. I'm like, oh, it's a great name for a band, right? It's a fun game. But this, we're having this conversation about her work as a recording producer, my work as an empowerment through songwriting coach, and the idea that the title Mental Health Sounds Like This kind of just landed in my brain. And I was like, oh, shoot, that's my next book. That's it. And so I sat down. I kind of shelved all of my other responsibilities for months.
So it literally started with just the title.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the conversation sort of evolved more and more. And I was like, well, actually, I think I want this to not be about me. I want it to be about us, but I want it to be, you know, a little bit story backed with my own experiences and, evidence based, whatever. So I draw on some of the stories of my previous clients anonymously, of course. And I also talk about my own story with hydrocephalus and bullying and abuse and blah. But then I wanted to make this more neuroscience backed as well. So I did a lot of research into, people like Daniel Levitin, and there was a book, gosh, what's it called? Your Brain on Art from Susan. Your Brain on Art from Susan Maximin and Ivy Ross, and various other, books like that. To just kind of help me back up that my experiences weren't just unique to me, that they are universal. And the music and songwriting are modalities for actual healing, you know? So it kind of all just fell together. I brainstormed for about a week on how I wanted it to look like. Again, I'm really grateful that I got to write the theme song for the Author Incubator back in 2018, because working with the Author Incubator gave me more of an idea of how I wanted the overall layout of the book to look like. And I just kind of went ham and wrote nonstop for months. And then, one of my girlfriends, Jonna Michelle, who's actually my photographer, she happens to be an ex-editor, so she helped me edit it. And I'm just really blown away by the feedback and by how much people are resonating with the music that I talk about within the book, and my story. And I think it's helping people. Well, from what I've heard, it's helping people remember, back to our previous point, of what joy looks like for them, of what their roadmap for themselves looks like, going back to their happier, healthier, whole versions of themselves.
Emma, can you provide, to achieve that, can you provide kind of the path that you lay out for the reader? So how did you organize the book? What does the order look like? You don't have to read every chapter titles if it is broken into chapter, but what is that?
Totally.
What does that look like? What does that course, that journey look like, that you want them to get to that endpoint where they understand what you're trying to share? How did you lay that out for them, for the reader?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, like art, just like everything else, there's no one size fits all. So the main sort of overall template that I use is very much around, first called, a technique I called word vomit or word dumping. where you kind of get out of your head and into paper what it is you want to, what it is that's going on in your life. And then you organize that into themes and categories. And then you put the puzzle pieces together. So, if a category is talking specifically about, I don't know, divorce, putting that puzzle pieces together. What does that look like? What do the words look like? What would the verse be this? Would the chorus be this? Would the bridge be this? And I, again, going back to my husband, compare this to a UFC fight, right? So the verses kind of give away your point shots.
Mm-hmm.
This is the point I'm trying to make. This is, what I'm trying to say. But the chorus is the punch in the feelings, the punch in the face. Like, in case you didn't understand what the verses were trying to tell you, watch yourself. This is what I wanted to, this is the point of this entire song. And if that doesn't work, the bridge or the finish the fight comes in. We're like, dang it, left upper hand hook or, left upper hand cut or whatever, left hook, if you did not understand what I was telling you, this is the point I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Finish the fight. You're done. And, so I kind of structure that in here. And then I give a whole bunch of other pointers when it comes to, the impact of singing on our mental health. I talk about different cultures when it comes to the art of singing and the different practices, whether you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Ayurvedic, like, it doesn't matter. Singing has been used across cultures for centuries, right? And so, like, again, the science behind that. And then we talk about, okay, so when it comes to singing your own thoughts, feelings, and ideas, and we already know that our brains can't tell the difference between imagination and fact. So how do we use this on purpose, in purpose? And then I give them, chord structures. I give them, permission to just play and have fun, because that's what we do as teenagers, right? And go from there. It's kind of, and throughout the whole book, there's examples of my own songs, as so that people can reference what I'm talking about and how I'm talking about it, which is fun, because I had one guy come up to me. He goes, "It was awesome. I got to learn about you a lot more, not just learning about the science and all that, but then I got to go to, Apple Music and play play the songs, and it just reaffirmed the messages that you were talking about in the book." And I did that on purpose, because I don't want to get in copyright fights with anybody, any other artists. But
Yeah.
there are many artists, of course, that have inspired this for me as well.
Yeah. I've dabbled in singing. I was in choir in Catholic school. I've been known to hit up some karaoke bars with some libations. And I still sing from time to time. My kids, I still listen to music from the 90s when I was in high school. So my kids know, like, Ozzy Osbourne. They know, like, all these artists from that era. They love music. And sometimes, even when I'm groggy in the morning and I have to record a podcast and I can't shake off that grogginess and I don't want to drag it too much into the episode, I'll put on a song and just sing.
Yep. I'm a huge advocate for me dance parties. My husband
Well,
will come
no one
down
saw.
to
I didn't say I danced. No one said you didn't see it, so it didn't happen.
anything works. That's a form of dance.
No, you know what though? There have been times that I've done that when I put on, like, my parents' music from Colombia, like the Spanish dancing music. You can't help but dance to that stuff. But that's for a different podcast. But it's incredible after, if I put on a certain mix of songs and sing along, where it starts slow and it's kind of like working its way out of my body. I'm talking about some Chris Cornell stuff here.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like a Stone was always my go-to for karaoke. By the time I'm done with that, it's like, it's primal. You know what I mean? Because I've always suffered from anxiety. So I've learned, like, for me, anxiety means I need to get something out of myself. whether
You know what's
it's
cool about that?
whether it's
Sorry.
writing, whether it's singing, whether it's whatever it may be, a conversation that I need to have, whether it's physical working out or right, there's something that needs to come out. So yeah, you could probably explain the science to me, but there's just something about this energy that doesn't have anywhere to go. I have to unleash it. And after a good one or two songs, now it's just so primal. That's the only way I
I
can
love
explain it. But you could
I love
probably
it.
explain it much more
Well,
eloquently than I can.
just very like in a very brief way, emotion is just energy in motion. And the fact that you went like a stone, which is a song about death,
Mm, yeah.
what a way to process such a dark and really unsettling topic, especially when you're dealing with anxiety. You know, that makes a lot of sense
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much for the words,
that
but
you were conscious.
like the range of the music and really,
Yeah.
starting low and then belting it out. But at the same time, there's this whole thing. I always joke with my friends that my nickname is Emo John because I have a deep appreciation for darker music.
Yeah.
And my friend, my best friend, lifelong best friend, she was in college for, I think, a mortuary sciences class. One of their
Okay.
projects was to have somebody write a eulogy for you. So she asked me to do that. And she's always been the same type, that drawn to that kind of music. And I'm like, why were we drawn to that so much? And for us, and she agreed and cried when she read what I wrote, it's because it shows you the depth of what you can feel. Like if you
Mhm.
feel this loss, this hurt, that means that at some point you had something so grand. So you can
Yeah.
look at this music and these songs as celebrations of like, holy shit, something this amazing, this beautiful is out there. But that song was just like the energy, but I completely can see just the way everything works out the way you said, just the science
Yeah.
behind it and what it means for your body and just releasing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, like, I think a lot of people don't realize, they don't pay attention to the lyrics, but realize, like, you're unconsciously still
Oh, yeah, yeah.
pro
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? So,
yeah.
it's interesting. It's interesting.
But just like that slow build up and then that chorus hits and Emma, for you, for the book, you gave kind of a breakdown of how it kind of reaches a crescendo. What do some of the chapter titles sound like in the book? Just out of curiosity.
So, yes. I mean, they're pretty blunt, I wanna say, 'cause, I mean, I don't create I'm a very creative person in terms of titling my songs, but when it comes to these, I want people to know exactly what the chapters are about.
Okay, I
So,
appreciate that.
yeah. So the first chapter is your soundtrack for healing. 2 is the science behind music and emotion. 3 is sitting with your emotions. 4 is identifying and understanding your emotions. 5 is processing and working through your emotions. So that is kind of, what I'm talking about with the word vomit and the putting into buckets and themes and things. But then we talk more into, the singing aspect. So creating your voice and uncovering your own superpowers. And then the role of performance and sharing your story, the somatic healing benefits of singing your own songs. If you're not familiar with somatic healing, it's very much about like um, emotion and healing together as it comes when it comes to being a practice. Um, the science of sound and frequency. So that's when I'm talking a lot about the different hertz, the different sound waves, the impact of different sound waves and hertz that has on our brains and how we uh, process
Yeah.
music.
Yep. Yep.
Then the power of performing and owning your voice in the world. Then your voice, your power, and the journey continues. So it's very much, again, kind of like the A to Z of the songwriting component, but also when it comes to using your own voice powerfully, and then when it comes to marrying the two together. And at the end of the book, I also want to make sure people realize that, again, it's not a one size fits all.
Mhm.
Uh, that there are other approaches. You can go chords first, melody first, be inspired by a quote on the Chappelle Show, like whatever it is, to inspire whatever song.
Out of curiosity, for your songwriting process, what do you
Mhm.
how do you usually start, with the words or the music?
Most often it will be the words, but it's almost at the time now where I often have the words and the melody come at the same time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the melody always informs the music. There are times when I will be tushing on my piano or guitar, and a chord structure will come, and then a melody will be informed by that chord structure. But it depends. This recent empowerment through songwriting series that I've been delivering at a rehabilitation clinic in DC uh, specifically worked on words first, and coming up with lines, etc. You take a well-written song and it can turn into, you can turn it into pop, you can turn it into punk, you can turn it into cabaret or lounge or whatever it is. A well-written song will be able to do a wide diaspora of genres. So it's the same thing with, how we want to approach songs. You can also have fun with it, right? Like you can have a song that is very dark, about very dark lyrical, ideas, and then put it to a ska beat. Sublime were really good at that. 311 were really
Yeah.
good at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I personally like to take, really positive songs, lyrics, and make them sound super, my ex-boss used to call it angsty girl rock. So it just
Okay.
depends.
Emma, I'm curious, you in writing the book, what evolved in you? What changed? Any author, they may, leading up to the book coming out, they're the specialists in their field. They want to share that, what they've experienced, what they've learned, what they've lived. But even the author can change and evolve just based on the
Mm,
process of writing a book, meaning they're revisiting a lot. So for you, how did you evolve in the process of putting this book out?
that's a good question. How did I evolve? I think a big part of this process was about me understanding myself more, and, to the point of the relationship between TBI, autism, and ADHD. My brain went, oh, snap, this makes sense. Of course, my brain works like that because of the TBI. I didn't know that. You only ever know what you know about yourself, right? Like my mother used to say, if you've lived your entire life only knowing what it's like to have brain trauma, only knowing what it's like to have diabetes, then that's just all you ever know. If you don't develop diabetes until you're 25, then you have a kind of a barometer of like, oh, this isn't as fun as I used to think it was. It's just that self-awareness piece really came into happen for me, came into being for me rather. Uh, I think there happened some other things, it was really fun for me learning more about the cultural aspect of how music has been integrated into healing for different communities and
Hmm.
religions. And I think that's made me more aware. I say that because New Zealand's a very multicultural country, yes, but it's also a very young country that isn't nearly as culturally diverse as the States. So being able to now understand a little bit more about how Native Americans use music and how, you know, Black Americans use music, going back to different tribes in Africa or different tribes in India, just having that awareness has very much informed my own relationship with my cultures and with the cultures of my clients and the backgrounds of my clients. So yeah, I mean, those are two examples, but I feel like, I mean, there's a billion and two different ways. It's
No, but I mean, those came to mind, so those
Yeah.
stand out powerfully. So
Yeah.
obviously we're talking in this episode about your books referenced. What book has inspired you? What book stands out to you that if I asked you to come back, you'd say, okay, this is the book that I want to share that I've read?
One of my all-time favorite books is called The Art of Asking from Amanda Palmer. And as you read it, you probably will giggle to yourself about how much of her work has definitely affected and informed my work. If you are unfamiliar with her, she is a punk cabaret artist who started with the Dresden Dolls back in the 2000s. She was a full-time street performer herself, but she was a human statue that basically made a living giving love and handing out roses to people. And that kind of, well, it didn't kind of, it definitely inspired my decision to move to DC and become a full-time street performer. Absolutely. But it also has inspired a lot of my, a lot of the ways in which I look at the music industry, the ways in which I look at my own work, and the ways that I look at how music is such a powerful healing modality for interpersonal, for, for our own personal selves, but also how we relate to each other and community at large. Yeah, fantastic book.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
And then Emma, in wrapping up, what are you up to these days? Is there anything you want to share? Maybe something I didn't ask about that we didn't go into? Anything at all? The floor is yours.
Cool. So I actually am about to launch my first online songwriting program called Mental Health Sounds Like This. This is a 6-week songwriting course, and that'll be an ongoing, I'll have intakes going forever. I am also gearing up to release a new single in 2026, which I can't believe is so close. That's wild to me. And yeah, I think those are the main things at the moment. I'm excited about. I mean, what's that saying? Man plans and God laughs. So as much as this is where I'm thinking right now. Watch this space. Watch this space.
You never know.
The world is an oyster for those who like oysters.
That's true. I mean, it's a lesson I'm learning now in my late 40s about how much life in the world can be if you go and take it, if you go and look for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that lesson, and it's great. I've learned that lesson, but it's always amazing to hear that lesson told through the eyes of someone else's perspective, their lens, their life. So I'm glad that I could be a witness to your work and sit here for this conversation. And again, Emma shared her book, Mental Health Sounds Like This, a creative blueprint for healing, mindfulness, and self-discovery through music. Emma, thank you so much for sitting down for this conversation.
Thank you, John. This was fantastic. I really appreciate your time and your spirit. Your energy is lovely.
It was amazing to just hear about your journey. Obviously, I'm a big fan of music, so I love learning those aspects of music that you shared. So thank you. And if there's anything that I might have missed, there's so much to cover, limited time. If there's something that you think I should have asked, please let me know. I'll reach out to Emma and see what kind of wisdom, guidance, anything, information I can get back. In the meantime, thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.